Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, I believe that the best way to make money on team sports, not just the NFL, but also in basketball, also in baseball, is on futures, right? We recognize that only one team's going to win the championship, but we also recognize that there are conferences, and your team has a shot at winning a conference. We also understand, too, that there are hedging opportunities. So take last year in the NFL. You understood that the San Francisco 49ers were the best team, talent-wise, in that NFC conference. But you also understood that there were some tough teams out there. Detroit, for example, was having a outsized season, right? You also recognized that Jared Goff had been to the Super Bowl before, and it matters with another team, the Rams. You recognize, too, that the Cowboys were having a pretty good year. So if you locked in great odds on San Francisco early in the season, you were able to hedge those odds with the other quality teams. Green Bay was also a surprise. But the point is, you were able to get a rate of return much better, in my opinion, than if you were betting these 55%, 45%, one-game weekly plays throughout the season, right? So I'm a firm believer in futures. I believe where you make your money is when you're able to spot a Green Bay. When you look at a Love and you realize, okay, this guy's a much better quarterback than people think. Then as you get the great odds and as Green Bay surprises people, right, makes it to the playoffs, wins a game in the playoffs, then you're able to hedge out at some point for a profit. So just understand where I stand. Futures are the linchpin of my betting strategy, right? Betting weekly, which I also do, but don't really bet as much on, right? Betting weekly, understand you're lucky, quite frankly, if you're able to clear a 60% winning percentage betting weekly. I believe your better bet is to know who the dominant teams are. You're getting leverage on them, right? Because none of these teams, no matter how successful, take Kansas City right now, right? 3 Super Bowl rings for Pat Mahomes. No matter how successful, even the dominant teams are not going off at even money right now. Right? You're getting 3-1, 4-1, 5-1 odds on them right now. Well, guess what, folks? I hate to break the news to you. I know it's August. It's not November. It's not December. But now's the time to lock in profits. You want to pick quality. You want to get a fair price. You want to pick underdogs who the public is sleeping on. Understand, too, this is an ongoing evaluation process. You'll be picking up futures plays well into late November. Because, of course, in football, you have the underrated, you have the overrated, you also have the injured, right? A lot of quality players are going to get injured. Just look at the quarterbacks from last year. Just look at the number of games missed. You can be all dressed up with nowhere to go when your quarterback has problems, right? Whether they're legal problems, suspension problems, physical injury problems, mental health problems. Folks, it happens. So right now, and we're going to have strong opinions here. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying this is what I think. Right now, I believe you have two teams. Two teams in the entire league who are Goliaths, right? Only two. Not everyone can be a Goliath. Now let's start in the NFC, because I believe this team is the best team in football. I believe there's the San Francisco 49ers, and then there's everyone else. Right? I keep hearing about Philadelphia. Many people think Philly's going to win the NFC East. Folks, Philly's defense last year was below average. Football, unfortunately, is a chemistry sport. Right? I take a below average unit. That's who they were last year. Understand, I took Philly when Philly played Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Right? I've watched this Philly team. Their defense was below average, particularly the second half of last season. So I understand. They signed a lot of guys. We'll get into the signings I think were the key signings in the offseason. Right? I get the idea that they had injuries. Okay, fine. Right? I believe there's dysfunction in Philly. I believe the coach is on the hot seat. I think you have a very hard time, and I mean this, going from a subpar unit, whether it's offensive, whether it's defensive, and then turning that into a Super Bowl caliber unit in 1 year. Right? Let's not get confused by thinking about 2 years ago. Folks, 2 years ago in football is too long a time. Right? So I'm a skeptic on Philadelphia. For that reason, I'm also a skeptic on Detroit. Right? I know I just mentioned Jared Goff making the Super Bowl. Should have beat the Niners in the playoffs last year, quite frankly. Right? It's my belief that everything broke right for the Lions last year. Right? Their head coach was going for it on fourth down, made some big fourth down plays. The offense, and granted, they have great wide receivers, and Goff in the regular season is quite the quarterback, isn't he? Right? The offense is gifted. I just have questions about that defense. Right? Are they going to be able to turn it around quickly? I believe it's unclear. Let me just point out, I'll concede, they have a ferocious front seven. Right? Maybe they can go from having problems in the secondary to having a better secondary in 1 year. Let's just say I'm a skeptic. Right? Let me point out, too, a lot of people love the Atlanta Falcons. Right? Kirk Cousins is there. It's a weak division. Right? The quarterback last year was a nightmare. They have an easy schedule. I'm sure you've heard some of these narratives. Folks, they were 7-10 last year. Let's be real. They were 7-10 last year. They had a subpar offense. They had a subpar defense. I don't believe they belong in NFC Conference Championship conversation. Right? To me, really, the NFC is top heavy. Let's talk about the teams I like. San Francisco. Folks, one of the biggest stories of the offseason, the Brandon Ayuk situation, and that's huge, seems to be getting resolved. According to Adam Schefter, the Niners want to keep him. Right? I believe this whole song and dance with New England, with the Steelers, I believe it's been just that, a song and dance. You look around this league, you look at the money that wide receivers have been getting. Right? Amon Brown, we were just talking about Detroit. Jefferson, Minnesota. Calvin Ridley. Look at all the money these guys have gotten. And just recognize that that's the salary structure right now in the NFL. I understand the Niners paid Deebo Samuel a lot of money. I understand they had to take care of Christian McCaffrey. He's getting paid the most of any running back in the league. Right? But Brandon Ayuk is a key part of that offense. He has a unique chemistry with Brock Purdy. He's your home run hitter. Right? I believe the Niners are going to have to bite the bullet. And they're going to have to pay this man. He's also in his mid-20s. You're talking about a receiver in his prime wanting to get paid fair market value. I believe the Niners are going to have to come up around $30 million a year. Understand, even that has a little bit of a discount. If I'm Brandon Ayuk, I have to be realistic and ask myself, where am I going to be on this level of juggernaut team? I know the Niners have not won a Super Bowl in years. Right, folks? They're just coming out of a Super Bowl. When Brock Purdy left the field, he left the field with a lead on Kansas City in overtime of a Super Bowl. Right? Understand, Jimmy Garoppolo, when they played Pat Mahomes in a Super Bowl the first time around, they had a double-digit lead in the second half of that Super Bowl. Right? So, to me, this is the best team in the league. It's also the best team in the league not to win a recent Super Bowl. The Niners are undervalued right now. Finally, let's name another team. This is, to me, the second most likely team to win the conference. And it's not readily apparent because they're in the news for the wrong reason. You hear that Dallas won't give Mike McCarthy a new contract. Now let's give Jerry credit for being consistent, because Jerry's that rare owner who also won't give his superstar quarterback Dak Prescott a new contract, nor will he give his superstar wide receiver, as I make this video, CeeDee Lamb, a new contract. Right? Jerry is tough with everybody, isn't he? But, and I know Tony Pollard's left. We'll mention that later in this video. But what I want people to understand is the Cowboys have a lot of talent. The Cowboys have a lot of performance. Just like the Niners haven't won the Super Bowl recently, the big knock on the Cowboys, besides having not won the Super Bowl recently, is the idea that Dak Prescott makes the playoffs and then folds up like a lawn chair. Right, folks? Understand, we're here on the futures market looking for hedging opportunities. If a team I've paid for in a futures bet makes it to the playoffs, this brother's happy. Then I can fool around with hedging. You know, what I need is for the team to be still in playoff contention in the middle of December. I believe more strongly in the Dallas Cowboys than I do the Philadelphia Eagles. It's August 16th, 2024. Right? I reserve the right to change any of these assumptions that I'm making. But right now, the NFC, to me, looks like it belongs to the Niners. The team I'm looking for as Plan B. And this is a league where Brock Purdy can get hurt. Deebo Samuels has been hurt. Right? Other guys can get hurt. Christian McCaffrey has been hurt in the past. The Plan B for me in the NFC are the Dallas Cowboys. Now let's talk about the long shots that work. Right? And when I say long shots, understand, some teams are going to win each of these divisions. You're going to look at the playoffs when they happen, and you're going to see wild card teams there. Some of these teams are going to be better than advertised. Folks, Josh Jacobs right now, former NFL rushing leader, has signed with the Green Bay Packers. Right now, understand, Love just got a huge deal. I believe the Packers are paying him more than they ever paid Aaron Rodgers in a year. Right? You know, we all watch different shows. There's a National Treasure on VSiN, Vegas Stats and Information Network. He's New Jersey's Mike Lombardi. And it's interesting. Mike is hard on a lot of players, right? He's diplomatic. He's soft-spoken at times, but you can tell when he lacks enthusiasm for some player who the press might believe in completely. But you could also tell the opposite, where he looks at a player and he likes the player. He thinks the player's undervalued. He thinks the player's a difference maker, helping his team win games. Now, from the middle of last season, Lombardi started mentioning Jordan Love, the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. Right? You could tell that Lombardi, great GM, by the way, when he was in the league. Not only that, it's hard to find a guy around bigger names, right? He was around Bill Walsh during the end of the Niner dynasty. He was around Al Davis, right? He's around some visionary type guys, right? And let's just say he was pubbing Jordan Love and Jordan Love delivered, right? Green Bay beats Dallas, who I just discussed, right? Green Bay goes out, had the Niners on their heels in the playoffs. Now you're giving Jordan Love a running back, and let's face it, the big news in the NFL from a salary perspective is how wide receivers suddenly have leaped past running backs in terms of their ability to get paid, right? We now view running backs as disposable. Well, in my eyes, Green Bay has just gotten one of the best running backs in the league. And, of course, he's landed with a team that made the playoffs, is one of the younger teams in the league, and is in a division where you have winnable games against the Bears. Folks, let's face it, the Bears have a rookie quarterback. I'm a Pac-12 guy. I believe in the first pick of last year's draft, but that's going to be a building experience for the Bears. The Vikings just lost their quarterback to injury, right? That's how injuries can change seasons. I believe that Green Bay is looking at winning, 3 or 4 of the games they play against the Bears and the Vikings. I understand there's history there and stuff like that. Green Bay just has too much right now, right? Detroit, maybe they're all that. Maybe they're going to revert to the mean. Right? I think Green Bay's in contention to win their division. We already know, just looking at last year's playoffs, that Green Bay is going to be very tough if they make the playoffs. I'm just here to tell you, Jordan Love is one of the better quarterbacks in the game. Right? Another team that interests me a little bit, NFC South. I know everyone is looking at Atlanta. Right? I want people to consider looking at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, above average defense. Baker Mayfield, I know he has a lot of critics. Baker Mayfield's better than you think. He just got paid. Right? To me, you want to talk about some easy wins. You got 2 games against Carolina. You got 2 games against the Saints. You got 2 games against Atlanta. I'm a Kirk Cousins fan. I just am not as enthusiastic as everyone else is. I think Tampa, to me, has certain things breaking their way. Let me name one more sleeper pick, and these are teams where I'm getting decent odds on the futures market, and I'm thinking, okay, great, now's the time to have a taste. Folks, Jimmy Garoppolo, who I still consider to be an above-average quarterback, look at his winning percentage. Right, again, he had a double-digit lead on Pat Mahomes in the second half of the Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo has joined the Rams. Right now, I'm a believer in Sean McVay, the guy who traded Jared Goff, just food for thought. I'm a believer in him. I'm a believer in Stafford. you know, let's face it, the Rams worked the room in last year's draft. Right? You know, I'm not talking about this last season. I'm talking about last year. Right? They worked the room. They got some ballers. I like how this team is positioned. I don't expect them to leapfrog the 49ers in the division. But let's just say, to me, the Rams are a good long shot play. Really all you're looking for here is a team that's going to be in playoff contention in mid-December. Let's talk about the AFC. In my opinion, it's the Ravens, and then there's everyone else. Folks, the Ravens signed Derrick Henry. I know. Lamar Jackson folds up in the playoffs. Right? No question about it. But this defense is ferocious. Now you're giving, just like you're giving Love a great running back, you're giving the Ravens a great running back. Right? Understand, the Ravens are so deep. They're coming off a 13-win season where they were the 1 seed in the AFC. They're so deep, they can save Henry for the big games. In other words, I don't expect to see Henry getting Derrick Henry level carries for the first 3 months of the season. I'm expecting them to then start using him late so that he's healthy and ready for the playoffs. Let's talk about the illusion in the room, and it is an illusion. Right? And it's because the team has a magician. Last year, it might shock some people. The best unit on the Kansas City Chiefs was its defense. Now, they've taken care of Chris Jones this offseason, as they had to. Right? But just understand, if you were in a fantasy pool, and if you loaded up on Kansas City offensive players, you were disappointed last year. Understand, KC had to go to Buffalo. They then had to go to Baltimore to get out of the conference. Right? That's how they got to the Super Bowl. And the reason's simple. Pat Mahomes. Right, folks? This is a guy, by the way, multiple Super Bowls on the short end of a double-digit lead in the second half that this guy has won. Right? This guy is a Hall of Famer. It's shocking he's as young as he is. Right? The reason they beat the Niners is because after Purdy leaves the field and they're down by 3 on a 4th down, Pat Mahomes converts. Right? Mahomes, another play. No one's open downfield. He runs for the first down. Right? This is a guy who actually earned MVP of the Super Bowl. Doesn't allow the superior Niner offense back on the field. That's why they won the Super Bowl. Right, folks? I can't bet on perfection. I can't bet on a team that had an average offense that's relying on some Jordan level figure to play at a Jordan level when they need it. Right? Think about how they beat the Ravens last year. You're in the playoffs. Suddenly, teammates you know. Right? You see them in Subway commercials. Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce take over the game. It only lasts for a half. But understand, they took over that game. The rest of the players, it looked like, didn't matter. Now we understand. Someone's blocking for Pat Mahomes. Defense has to be on its heels because Pat's looking at different wide receivers, different parts of the field. Right? He's not just focusing on Travis Kelce. But I'm just telling you, it's those two guys who beat the Ravens. Right, folks? KC does not have the team the Ravens have. Right? Pat Mahomes can't do a Michael Jordan every time he plays the Ravens. I know it seems that way. But let's face it. I mean, this was a guy carrying a team, wasn't it? Right? To me, gamblers need to look at better teams and not depend on some guy dropping the football equivalent of 50 points. Right? 50 NBA points. So to me, Kansas City, because it has to pay, guys like Chris Jones, guys like Pat Mahomes, guys like Travis Kelce, who's now the highest paid tight end in the league, because it has to pay those guys a lot of money, the team's going to be thin. Andy Reid is arguably the league's best coach. Let's just say he does not have a deep team to work with. There was a time when Pat Mahomes was throwing the football to people like Tyreek Hill. Those days are behind us. Right? So to me, the Ravens are a better bet than the Chiefs are in the division. Let's talk about another illusion. Folks, I know C.J. Stroud had a great year last year, and he's a great quarterback. Truth be told, he's a great quarterback. But his team's not great. In fact, let me just say this. As good as the AFC North is, and folks, they're spectacular, the AFC South, right? Houston, Jacksonville, the Colts, the Titans, they're questionable. Right? I don't like anybody from the AFC South. I know this sounds hard, but it is what it is. So to me, they're the Ravens. Obviously, any team with Pat Mahomes has a chance to come out of the conference. We'll include Kansas City. But just understand, you need to realize, thin team. This is what happens when you're dominant for too long. Right? Guys start getting paid. Guys start leaving. Thin team. Right? KC has a shot. I would say Cleveland has a shot. Folks, don't sleep on Cleveland's defense. Right? I know Joe Flacco is left. All I'm saying is, don't sleep on Cleveland's defense. Deshaun Watson is high variance. If he comes back and he's healthy, I'm telling you, Cleveland, a better team than you think, will have an opportunity to do some things. The problem Cleveland has, let's just break it down in 6 games. 2 games against the Ravens, 2 games against the Cincinnati Bengals, 2 games against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me also say, too, in the entire league, you're not going to find a better group of quarterbacks. Right? I believe Joe Burrow is a Hall of Fame level quarterback. Now, he's going to have to go out and stay healthy. Right? He's going to have to go out and win a Super Bowl. Understand, I believe Russell Wilson is a Hall of Famer. He's already won a Super Bowl. He was 1 yard away from winning a second Super Bowl. And of course, when you look at Lamar Jackson, and I agree, in the playoffs, he folds up. No argument from me there. But he has one of the highest winning percentages in the entire National Football League. He's a 2-time MVP. I believe he's a future Hall of Famer. Right? Deshaun Watson has the talent as well. He just hasn't had the health. And of course, he's had off-the-field issues. So all I'm saying is, talent-wise, if you feel there's a division with better quarterback talent than this division, please tell us about it in the comment section of this YouTube video. I think Cleveland is a great dark horse in the AFC. I think Baltimore's the standard. I'll bow down to Kansas City. They have a shot always with Pat Mahomes. Let me just say, I still believe in Buffalo. They have a great home field environment. I believe with Stephon Diggs, let's just say he's left. That's a hit. No question about it. But you still have Josh Allen at quarterback. You still have the Super Bowl level quarterback. Hasn't won it. Conceded. Hasn't gotten there. Right? He's the Oscar Robertson of our time. Right? Oscar had to deal with the Boston Celtics. Couldn't break through for years until he meets up with Kareem. Josh Allen's the Oscar Robertson of the NFL. But Buffalo has a defensive unit as well. And I think they'll survive losing Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. The Jets. Folks, they have a defense. They have Aaron Rodgers. Their problems were offensive. I think the Jets are a dark horse in the AFC. Right? Let's talk about Miami. I have questions about Miami's defense. I'm not going to include them in my list until I see the first few games of the season to see how Miami is playing defensively. Right? People involved in fantasy football understand that Tua has some weeks where he's the best quarterback on the board from a fantasy perspective. He has other weeks where he's not. Right? We also understand that pacing-wise, the Dolphins have a hard time pacing themselves. Right? The offense is simply too explosive. Sometimes it feels like the defense is on the field too long. Now let's talk about some off-season moves that I think people need to think about. Miami, of course, Odell Beckham. I think that's a situation you want to take a look at. The Jets, and this is a non-comprehensive list. This is just what hopped out to me. Let me also point out, too, that I typically overlook offensive linemen. I believe we all know the great lines in the league. I believe we understand that teams like Detroit have a great offensive line. Cleveland has a great offensive line. I know I keep hearing about Atlanta's offensive line, Philly's offensive line. The Jets are supposed to have a great offensive line. I don't name linemen in the offseason moves here, right? Because I believe the offensive line works as a unit. But let's talk about the offseason moves that you should know about and think about if you're headed into a fantasy draft or if you're just looking at a team and thinking about the futures market. The Jets, they have Tyrod Taylor. They also picked up wide receiver Mike Williams. Folks, Mike Williams with Aaron Rodgers, that could be combustible. Cleveland, you heard me talk about the health concerns with Deshaun Watson. Well, they picked up Jameis Winston. They also have Jerry Jeudy. Right? That's a team to look at. Pittsburgh, of course, picked up Justin Fields. Let me make a point here. Justin Fields is a better athlete than Russell Wilson. He's not a better quarterback. Wilson is about to start playing preseason football. Justin Fields, of course, did not do well his first game in the preseason for Pittsburgh. I believe Russell Wilson will be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nonetheless, just understand, Mason Rudolph is gone. The Steelers have, Kenny Pickett's gone. The Steelers have revamped their quarterback situation. It's Russell followed by Justin Fields. Houston's interesting. Houston added Stephon Diggs. Houston also now has Joe Mixon, the running back from Cincinnati. Right? Just food for thought. Indy, of course, picked up Joe Flacco. Richardson had health problems, missed most of last season. Flacco, of course, was one of the big reasons why Cleveland did well. Let's see how that plays out. Jacksonville picked up Gabe Davis from Buffalo. Now, even though he got a big contract, I'm just not a believer in Trevor Lawrence. Right? But understand, Gabe Davis is now with Jacksonville. The Titans are interesting. They picked up Tony Pollard. They picked up Calvin Ridley. On defense, in the safety, they picked up Jamal Adams. Right? The problem is, of course, they only won 6 games last year. The other problem is I believe the coach they fired, Mike Vrabel, is one of the best coaches in the league. To me, when I see a great coach like that get replaced, I'm thinking there's dysfunction behind the scenes that's going to end up costing that team on the field. Kansas City did a wise thing. They have Carson Wentz backing up Pat Mahomes. Even Superman needs a backup. Right? Vegas picked up Gardner Minshew. We understand he could well be the starting quarterback for the team this year. The Vikings picked up Sam Darnold and Aaron Jones, the running back from Green Bay. Let me just say this about Darnold. I'm a Pac-12 guy. Darnold is actually, and I know he's had an interception problem. So did Peyton Manning when he first got in the league. Darnold was one of the better quarterbacks I saw in the Pac-12 a few years ago. Right? Darnold can play. Now, life has a lot to do with situations, and Darnold hasn't been in the best situations. Right? He lost out to Brock Purdy, a better quarterback. Don't sleep on Purdy. When he was backup for the Niners. Right? But Darnold's one of those guys who I always keep an eye on because I get the feeling with the right group, this guy would be an above-average quarterback. Atlanta, of course, picked up Kirk Cousins. Let's talk about 2 pickups that, to me, are very meaningful. I know the rest of the world disagrees with me somewhat. The Rams picked up Jimmy Garoppolo. I want people to look at Garoppolo's winning percentage. The problem with Garoppolo is a health problem. It's not a talent problem. Let me add that Garoppolo doesn't have the strongest arm out there. Right? He's not a gunslinger. But this guy sees the field. He's a point guard. He's Jason Kidd. Right? And so to me, this Ram pickup, especially since I think the Rams are a good dark horse in the NFC, is a meaningful pickup. The last one, Seattle, picked up Sam Howell. Folks, I'm not sure if Joe Montana could have won with the Washington Commanders. Right? To me, Sam Howell is an above-average quarterback. I'm expecting him to do well when he plays. So to sum up, I believe there are 2 Goliaths out there right now. In the NFC, it's the team that won the conference last year, the San Francisco 49ers. But pay attention again to that Brandon Ayuk situation, which is lingering as I make this video. Hopefully everyone gets wise and Ayuk gets re-signed. If Ayuk gets re-signed, this is the Goliath in the NFC. They also have a pretty good schedule. Right? This to me, let me say this too. Kyle Shanahan has not won a Super Bowl as a head coach. Folks, don't let that fool you. This is the Andy Reid era. A lot of talented coaches haven't won a Super Bowl in this Andy Reid era. Right? I mean, think about, well, I'll just put it to you this way. He's been a head coach who's led his team to multiple Super Bowl appearances. He's one of the best head coaches in the league. The other Goliath is headed by a guy who has won a Super Bowl, who just led his team to the 1 seed in the AFC, and that's John Harbaugh. Don't sleep on him, folks. He just has too many horses for the other teams in the conference to compete with during the season, and that includes Kansas City. Right? Kansas City is Elvis and his backup band, right? You know, just understand the Ravens are built differently. You have a hellacious defense. You have a pretty good offense that just added Derrick Henry. That's the Goliath in the room, not the team that just won its third Super Bowl in recent years. Right? That's how I see it in terms of teams that have a shot, who you want to be getting leverage with. In the AFC, Jets, Cleveland, Buffalo. In the, sorry, but not every team is worthy, in my opinion, of even speculation. In the NFC, folks, the Dallas Cowboys, as bad as their press has been, to me, have the edge on everyone else. We'll also mention the Packers, the Lions, the Rams, and Tampa Bay. Right now, I'm not spending money on anyone else. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.